Hello, my name's Caroline and I'm your guide to Ashton Court. It is a mansion house and estate in southwest England and has acres of rolling countryside, paths and bike trails. Perfect for a stroll, picnics and festivals. A wonderful escape from city life, as it is just 2 miles from the centre of Bristol. The 7 miles of high walls and majestic gatehouses that surround the land still lend an air of mystery to what lies beyond. The mansion. The Grade 1 property is both inside and outside an architectural puzzle. Centuries of development have seen the house rebuilt, partly demolished, clad, added to and reinvented. As a result, the court lends itself to secret passageways, hidden rooms and a labyrinthine appearance. Understanding this building, however, is complicated due to 1,000 years of history, not least the last 200 or 300 years of misinterpretation of thousands of documents, myths and stories. The original manor house can be traced to the 6th century. Long Ashton Estate and the manor are mentioned in the Domesday Book of 1086, and the settlement of Ashton, as it was known, was shared between 3 landowners, the chief of which was Bishop Geoffrey of Coutances by William the Conqueror. Then another Norman, Thomas de Leon, acquired the manor in 1390 and rebuilt the property by marrying a wealthy heiress. In 1392, the Leons were granted a royal licence to enclose their lands and create a deer park, which still exists to this day. Then later, Sir Richard Choke acquired the manor of Ashton in 1454 and is responsible for rebuilding parts of the house. Then later still, in 1545, were the first of the Smythe family, which continued to rebuild and extend the manor for the next 400 years. In 1630, Thomas Smythe built the Inigo Jones-style southwest wing. They alternate triangular and segmental pediments. But in 1730, the extravagancies of Sir John Smythe I reduced the estate to ruin. Thankfully, in 1741, Jarrett Smith gained possession of Ashton Court when he married Florence Smythe, and by developing the prosperous Bedminster coal mines, secured the finances of Ashton Court. Most people pronounce it as Smythe, as it sounds posh, but ironically the family insisted they were called Smith, so we will too. So when Sir John Hugh Smith II married a wealthy heiress with a sugar plantation in Jamaica and acquired the estate in 1783, he appointed Humphrey Repton to plan the remodelling of the east front, so Ashton Court Mansion would be facing Bristol. But sadly John died before it was possible. So instead, in 1810, his nephew Sir Hugh Smith III, who was mad about horses and a keen huntsman, spent a fortune on building substantial stables. The horses were looked after better than the servants. The return wing is now the cafe. The first photographs of Ashton Court Mansion were in 1866, showing the west front. Today it remains structurally unchanged, with only the magnolia trees having grown. Now we enter inside the manor house into the west wing. In this 16th century porch, with its surviving plaster ceiling, there is part of what might be a Roman mosaic, presumably from a villa that stood on this very site. But where is it? Here is the Great Hall, which is said to match the exact dimensions of a Saxon hall, but some historians dispute this fact. During that time, all life happened in the Great Hall: cooking, eating, drinking and sleeping for the whole household, servants, dogs and visitors. But the loo was a hole in the ground outside. When is a door not a door? When it is a small blocked stone doorway, which must date to the times when the floor was lower. By 1885 it reached its ultimate metamorphosis, crammed with a plethora of tasteless bric-a-brac from almost every century. The hearth in the original building would have been central and open to the roof, but the current floor and chimney piece, dated 1777, is now showing damage. I wonder why the floor is like this. And what was on this wall? From the Great Hall is the doorway to the old refectory. This is an example of how a high-status building was subdivided over 2 floors. The upper floor provided a secure living and sleeping room for the lord and his family or guests away from the hurly-burly of the Great Hall, and meant no more slumming with all the servants. The magnificent refectory roof is the only surviving feature of the rebuilding in 1390, and it was expertly repaired in works funded by Bristol City Council in the 70s, but the room is so uninviting. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it was restored to its former glory? This doorway also takes us to the northwest wing. This was probably Ashton Court's greatest known artistic achievement in terms of space, plasterwork and joinery. During the 1770s, the architect Horace Walpole replaced the dining room with a billiard room and a new library in the Strawberry Hill style of the Gothic Revival, which is known for extravagant pointed arches. But it has been out of use since 1914, except for during World War II, when the tank regiment did their training in the billiard room. But how did they get the tanks in the room? And now sadly out of bounds since the terrible fire by vandals in 2013. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Crossing back inside the Great Hall to the opposite door and looking to your left through an archway is a short passage to the 70s bar. There's another low blocked doorway in the side wall. I wonder why. Looking to the right is the ostentatious 17th century staircase and restored in 1885. Near the foot of the stair is another strange old door with a pre-1600 arch. Wonder what's behind that one. Opposite are painted glass panels of heraldry. Sir John Hugh Smith in the late 18th century carried out historical research with John Collinson, the Somerset historian, and probably was responsible for these. At the top is the portal to the out-of-bounds world due to the derelict upper floors and home to some of Ashton Court's bat population. Oh no, not bats! South of the Great Hall is the Inner Hall. It is very dark inside with only one large window, which does not let any light in. The dark Victorian panelling doesn't help either. There have been many windows built in Ashton Court Mansion House, which are Gothic variations of this large 15th century powerful perpendicular window. A huge window in a windowless room. The fireplace, dated 1695, hides another small blocked doorway. Again we have a door which is not a door. Today it serves as little more than an inner circulation area, with doorways to 5 separate rooms and no natural light. Entering the lounges from the inner hall is like entering a different world with no dark brown Victorian makeover. There may have been an earlier building, possibly dating 1580, but what we see now is the 2 lounges with 5 window bays. The southwest wing has 13 bays. So, where are the other 8 bays? The rooms have what architectural experts call a heavy entablature dado and bolection mould with a pulvinated frieze above the fireplace, possibly built in 1695 with the new sash windows. In the large lounge is what looks like another door that is not a door. And there is another door to what once opened to the long gallery, sadly derelict and now an office, which has the other 8 window bays. The ceilings and attractive ceiling roses are modern replacements, and during the 1970s restoration, the panelling was removed for chemical treatment and repair, then expertly reinstated before warping or worse. In the small lounge, a 17th century flower painting was discovered. We leave daylight and enter the darkness of the high Victorian Gothic. The gatehouse area has its foundations in the 1450s of Richard Choke, and then Hugh Smith III raised the gatehouse for a new story above. In 1873, Greville Smith created the Gothic revival you see today, including the fantastic fan vaulting in 1885 by architect C.E. Davis. At the same time, he glazed over the inner court and created a fabulous fantasy heated winter garden with waterfalls, tropical plants and birds. It has gone from one extreme to another with the dull, very plain 1970s bar. Now we enter the grand music room, which was a stable, then a museum, and then about 1884 an entertainments room with the installation of a large 30 stops organ. Ground floor windows were widened and lowered, and the central doorway replaced with a window. 2 large Bath stone chimney pieces, one now decaying, carved in a French Renaissance style with twisted piers, large hoods and inscriptions, "Welcome as is the spring to earth," and "100,000 welcomes," were installed on the north wall. The 3-dimensional classical coffered ceiling and the relief carving of the linen fold panelled walls and shutters completed the conversion from stables to the late Victorian music room. But now is empty. Ashton Court was never quite the same family home after the First and Second World Wars. In 1917 it was converted to a military hospital for convalescent officers, one of whom was the writer C.S. Lewis, author of The Lion, Witch and Wardrobe. I wonder if that gave him inspiration. Post-1918, the building continued as a hospital, and once the last patient was gone, The Ministry of Pensions resided there until 1923. Ashton Court was first a transit camp for troops from the Midlands on their way to France. The heavily wooded estate offered perfect camouflage for military vehicles and equipment prior to the D-Day invasions of 1944. As Ashton Court was on the flight path to an aerodrome, barrage balloons were put up and a gun was positioned in the grounds. It was also a base for an RAF headquarters and a US Army headquarters, and so dances were held every Friday evening in the Long Gallery, but only for the officers.
Oh, what a lovely wall, I don't think.
The Town and Country Planning Act 1947 compulsorily purchased Ashton Park to be used for the public, and as most of the interior of Ashton Court was sold off in the 1947 Great Sale to pay for death duties, the heir Greville Cavendish decided to sell the house. This resulted in the end of the private realm. For some years it remained unoccupied. The gardens returned to nature. Rewilding. Vandals broke in, and even a vixen lived under the library floor. Clever fox. Rain cascaded through the roof, and grass grew in the Long Gallery. Luckily, Ashton Court Mansion wasn't demolished, as so many country houses were at that time, but purchased by Bristol City Council in 1959. Between 1974 and 76, the council spent over £2 million renewing the roofs and chimneys, saving Ashton Court by making it watertight. The house was partly renovated and ran as an events and wedding venue until 2017. In May 2018, Art Space Lifespace stepped in to take on the running of the mansion, while options are being considered for its future. Since opening the doors to the public, they have hosted exhibitions, art and sculpture workshops, family events, team away days, and provided theatre and dance performances.
If these walls could talk, oh, what wonderful stories they could tell.
Bristol Civic Society is campaigning to secure renovations and the reuse of Ashton Court. The Purcell report, published in 2019, titled Ashton Court Mansion Towards a Sustainable Future, gives excellent suggestions. In 2021, the Prince's Foundation is leading a community consultation on the future of Ashton Court. Today, Ashton Court Mansion House is a Grade 1 listed property of national importance within a Grade 2 listed historic park and gardens, and enjoyed by thousands of visitors. However, with English heritage recognising it as being in slow decay, its future hangs in the balance. Watch this space!